Electric, crystal lights, cameras flashing, people dressed like royalty. The red carpet outside the Hale Plaza shimmered as if it knew how many secrets it held. I stood a few feet from the velvet rope, calm, but aware of every stare digging into me. Then came her voice, sharp, entitled, impossible to miss. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. She's not a guest, Madison Hale announced to the guards, her wine glass clinking as she waved toward me. Just push her aside. She probably wandered in thinking this was a charity event. Laughter followed. Cold, precise laughter. I said nothing. Just adjusted my earring, kept my shoulders straight. Silence was my armor. It always had been. The security guard hesitated. He looked from Madison to me, clearly unsure who was who. "Ma'am, do you have an invitation?" he asked. Madison chuckled, brushing her hair back, like she owned the world. "You don't need to ask her that," she sneered. "She's my cousin. Used to work in the family company until she got fired for being unqualified." The guard's brows lifted slightly. "Is that true, ma'am?" I smiled faintly. "No. But you'll find out the truth in about 3 seconds." Madison rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, Nora. You always were dramatic. This event's for actual investors, not." Her words froze as the guard's earpiece buzzed. He listened carefully, nodded, then turned slowly toward her. "Miss Hale," he said firmly, "we would, but she owns the building." For a heartbeat, the whole world went silent. Even the cameras stopped clicking. Madison's smirk collapsed. Her fiancé's hand slipped off her waist. What did you just say?" she stammered. "You heard me," the guard repeated. "Ms. Nora Lawson is the primary owner of Hale Plaza." The flash of cameras returned, brighter, hungrier. Reporters leaned closer, murmuring her name, my name. I didn't speak. Didn't need to. I just stepped forward, every inch of that marble floor echoing beneath my heels like justice finally finding its rhythm. Madison's voice trembled behind me. You bought it?" I turned briefly, meeting her eyes with a quiet, devastating calm. "No, Madison. I built it." The golden doors opened wide, the chandeliers beyond spilling light across my path. As I walked through, whispers followed like wind chasing a storm. I didn't look back, not once. Because tonight wasn't about being invited in. It was about reminding them who locked the door in the first place. The golden ballroom opened up before me, glittering like something out of a dream I'd once been told I'd never deserve. Crystal chandeliers floated above hundreds of people, politicians, investors, CEOs, the kind of people who'd never shaken my hand before. Yet tonight, they smiled as if they'd always known me. I moved through the crowd with calm precision, every step deliberate, every glance controlled. Madison's voice still echoed faintly behind me, that familiar tone of disbelief and envy. But I didn't stop. I'd spent too many years listening to her talk down to me. Tonight, she could choke on her own words. "Miss Lawson," a waiter greeted, bowing slightly. "Would you like champagne?" I took the glass, smiled softly. "No, thank you. I'm just here to watch people realize how wrong they were." He chuckled nervously, unsure if I was joking. I wasn't. The orchestra shifted into a new melody as the host of the gala took the stage, a man in his 50s with a sharp tuxedo and a microphone that amplified every lie he'd ever told about my family's legacy. His name was Charles Avery, one of my father's oldest partners. The same man who signed my termination letter 2 years ago. He looked out over the crowd and smiled. "Welcome, everyone, to the annual Hale Foundation Gala, our celebration of vision, success, and legacy. And tonight, we are honored to hold this event in the beautiful Hale Plaza, now under new management." Whispers rippled through the tables as he said it. I could feel eyes turning toward me, people nudging one another. Charles cleared his throat. "In fact, we're joined by the new owner herself, Miss Nora Lawson." Applause erupted. I didn't stand right away. I wanted to feel the weight of the moment, The same hall where I was once escorted out by security for being unprofessional, now echoing with applause for me. I rose, smiled briefly, and nodded in acknowledgement. My fingers trembled slightly against the glass stem, but my expression didn't flinch. They couldn't see the storm beneath the surface, the anger, the humiliation, the nights I couldn't afford dinner while they threw parties in my name. I sat back down, catching Madison's reflection in a mirror across the room. She looked frozen, like someone watching her own downfall unfold in slow motion. "Miss Lawson," a voice said beside me. It was Charles, now off stage, his charm rehearsed. "Congratulations. You've certainly made an entrance." "I suppose I learned from the best," I replied smoothly. His grin wavered. "You know, when your father left the company, no one thought you'd come this far." I tilted my head. "No one, or just you?" He blinked. "You haven't changed." "You have," I said quietly. "You've gotten smaller." He chuckled awkwardly and walked off. I didn't care. Tonight wasn't about them. It was about the woman they buried in rumors, who clawed her way back from humiliation with her bare hands. But the past had a way of chasing you, even through gold and champagne. Madison appeared again. This time, she didn't look smug. She looked desperate. "Nora," she said, her tone uneven, "can we talk privately?" I swirled my glass. Last time he said that, I walked into a room full of board members who accused me of fraud. So no, I think we're done with private talks. She lowered her voice. I was following orders. Dad, he wanted me to save it. I stood up, face calm, but my pulse quick. "You stood there and laughed when they threw me out. You told everyone I'd ruin the company. You didn't just follow orders, Madison. You enjoyed it." People nearby were pretending not to listen, but they were. Every whispered sentence was bait, and I let them have it. Madison's voice cracked. "You can't keep holding this against me. We're family." I smiled bitterly. So was I, until you all decided I wasn't. She stared at me like she didn't recognize who I'd become. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she thought the quiet, naive girl who used to bake cookies for the office was still somewhere in there. But she was gone. She died the night they escorted her out of this same building in front of strangers. Now I was someone else. As I turned to walk away, Madison's fiancé, Daniel, stepped in my path. "You've made your point," he said coldly. "Maybe it's time to stop making a scene?" I met his eyes, unshaken. "You think this is a scene?" I took a slow step closer, lowering my voice. "No, Daniel. This is the ending you both wrote. You just never thought I'd be the one reading it aloud." He didn't respond, just shifted awkwardly, unsure what to say to a woman he used to mock. I leaned in slightly, just enough for him to hear. "The building, the foundation, the name, it's all mine now. So next time you laugh at someone for standing outside the door, make sure they don't own the key." Then I turned, walking back toward the ballroom lights, every step deliberate, every sound in sync with a rhythm of satisfaction. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. And nothing feels heavier, or more powerful, than watching the people who buried you realize you learned how to dig yourself out. The night had stretched deep into its golden hour. The chandeliers glimmered like constellations, but the only stars I noticed were the ones burning in the reflection of my glass. My pulse was calm now, too calm, the kind of calm that comes after years of swallowing storms. I stepped out onto the terrace, away from the noise and the polite applause echoing through the hall. The cool breeze brushed against my neck, carrying the faint scent of perfume and champagne. Down below, the city pulsed with light, the city that once laughed at my downfall. And tonight it whispered my name. I heard a slow clap behind me. "You really pulled it off," came a voice low, familiar. I turned. Mark Turner. My former mentor, the one who believed in me when no one else did. His tuxedo jacket was open, tie loosened. "You walked into their kingdom," he said, grinning faintly, "and bought the throne." I smirked. "No, Mark. I just reminded them who built the walls." He chuckled, leaning against the railing beside me. "Still sharp, I see." For a moment, the noise of the ballroom faded. The two of us just stood there, student and mentor, the world below unaware of the battles we'd fought in silence. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. "Fighting so hard just to prove them wrong?" I took a breath.
No.
But I regret letting their opinions define my worth for so long. Mark nodded slowly, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. That's what I wanted to hear. Inside, the doors opened again and voices spilled out. Laughter, clinking glasses, fake smiles. Then Madison's voice sliced through it all. "Nora." I didn't turn. I just sipped my drink. "You're persistent," I said quietly. She stepped beside me, still in her silver dress, though the confidence she wore earlier was long gone. Her makeup had faded slightly, her posture wasn't sharp anymore. "I deserve to explain," she said softly. "I didn't know Dad and Charles were planning to sell the company's shares behind your back. I thought." "You thought?" I turned finally, meeting her gaze. "You thought throwing me out would make you look better. You thought lying about me would save your reputation. You thought you'd never have to see me again."
So go on, Madison.
"Tell me what you thought would happen." Her eyes glistened. "You don't understand what it was like living under his pressure. You were the favorite. I was just—" "Spare me," I cut in. "We were all under his pressure. The difference is, I didn't destroy my family to impress him." She looked down, her fingers trembling around her glass. "Nora, please. I've lost everything. The company's gone. Daniel's talking to lawyers. I'm scared." I stared at her for a long, quiet moment. There was a time when her tears would have shattered me, when I would have reached out, offered comfort, begged for peace. But that version of me was gone. "You should be," I said softly. "But not because of me. Because of what greed does when you let it live too long." She swallowed hard, her eyes glassy. "You've changed." I smiled faintly.
No.
I just stopped apologizing for surviving. Madison turned to leave, but before she could, I added, "You know what hurts the most? I would have shared all of this with you if you just believed in me." She froze. Her shoulders shook slightly, but she didn't turn around. Then she walked back into the ballroom, disappearing behind the gold doors. Mark exhaled beside me. "That was cold," he murmured. I looked out over the skyline.
No, Mark.
That was clarity. He studied me for a moment, then smiled gently. "You've learned what real power sounds like." "It's quiet," I said. "Almost peaceful." He nodded. "Then keep it that way." We stood in silence for a while longer, the city humming below us like a secret we'd finally earned. When I went back inside, the mood had shifted. People approached with newfound respect, investors offering partnerships, reporters asking for interviews. But all I wanted was air. Freedom.
Peace.
Madison sat in the corner, alone. Her champagne glass empty, her eyes distant. I saw her reflection in the mirror, and for the first time, I didn't see an enemy. I saw a woman who finally understood what she'd lost. And that, more than anything I could have said, was enough. The host's voice echoed again through the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude this evening, a special thanks to the woman who made this event possible, Miss Nora Lawson." Applause thundered once again. Cameras flashed. I smiled politely and stood, walking to the center of the room. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady, but low enough to make the room lean in. "When I first walked into this building years ago, I was told I didn't belong. Tonight, I'm not here to prove anyone wrong. I'm here to thank them. Because without that rejection, I wouldn't have built the strength to stand here." Every word felt like release, the kind that burns and heals all at once. "I don't believe in revenge," I said, letting my gaze drift briefly to Madison's table. "I believe in redemption, even if it takes years to find it." And then I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped losing myself trying to win. The crowd stood clapping. Cameras flashed. And under those lights, those same lights that once shone on my humiliation, I stood tall, finally owning every scar that built me. The gala ended past midnight, the final notes of the orchestra fading into quiet applause. Outside, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, taxis flashing by, distant laughter echoing across the avenue. But inside Hale Plaza, something had shifted forever. I stood alone near the grand staircase, tracing my hand along the marble railing. The very same staircase I once climbed nervously as an intern, clutching reports that no one bothered to read. Back then, I was invisible. Now, every step I took echoed like a declaration. As the last guests trickled out, Madison approached again. Her voice was small this time, almost fragile. "You could have humiliated me," she said, her eyes wet but steady. "You could have told everyone what I did. But you didn't." I met her gaze, calm. "That's not my kind of power." She blinked, confused. "Power," I continued, "isn't about revenge, Madison. It's about peace. Knowing I don't need to destroy someone just because they try to destroy me." She swallowed hard. "I don't expect forgiveness." "I'm not offering it," I said softly. "But I am done carrying the weight you gave me." Her lips parted as if to say something, but no words came. Instead, she simply nodded and turned away, slower this time, quieter, as though she finally understood the difference between control and grace. When she disappeared down the corridor, I exhaled. For years, I'd imagined this night, how I'd make them pay, how I'd throw their arrogance back in their faces. But standing there now, I realized something. The most powerful revenge wasn't making them kneel. It was watching them see what I'd become without them. I left the ballroom and walked out into the crisp night air. The security guard from earlier stood near the door and straightened as I passed. "Good evening, Ms. Lawson," he said respectfully. I smiled. "Good evening, and thank you for earlier." "Just doing my job, ma'am," he replied. "But I'll admit, that was one for the books." I laughed softly.
It was.
My driver opened the door to my black sedan, and as I stepped in, I looked up one last time. The massive letters on the tower gleamed under the city lights. Lawson Holdings. The name that once got erased from every office plaque now glowed brighter than ever. The car pulled away slowly. My reflection in the tinted window wasn't the frightened intern or the broken girl they used to dismiss. It was the woman who rebuilt her story, one quiet, relentless chapter at a time. My phone buzzed beside me. A message from Mark. "You did good tonight. The city finally knows who you are." I smiled and typed back. "They don't have to know. I just needed to." I set the phone down, watching the lights streak past outside. Each one felt like a piece of the past disappearing behind me. When we stopped at a red light, I saw my own reflection again. Calm, proud, but not cruel. I realized that real victory doesn't scream. It simply stands tall and lets the silence speak. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't trying to belong. I was finally free. The driver glanced in the mirror. "Home, ma'am?" I nodded. "Yes," I said quietly, looking back at the building fading into the skyline. Finally home. And as the car glided away, I felt it, that rare, fragile kind of peace that only arrives after you've stopped proving your worth to the wrong people. They'd called me a failure once, but tonight, they'd whispered my name with respect. And that sound, soft,